Vladimir Duterte.
And I'm Meg Oliver. In less than an hour, Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev will be formally sentenced for his crimes. Last month, the jury sentenced the 21-year-old to death for his role in the 2013 terror attack.
300 people died and hundreds more were injured in the horrific bombing. We are awaiting our reporter Nicole Jacobs from our Boston station WBZ to join us. She's going to join us live from those proceedings. While we await her, there are a lot of people that are wondering, Meg, exactly why Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is going through this sentencing phase of the proceedings, and we're going to talk to Rikki Lake at the end of that. We do have our reporter on the ground there now. Let's talk to her.
Well, let's talk to Rikki Klieman.
Oh, let's talk to Rikki.
Yes, she's joining us right now.
Do you know that that's happened to me in my life before? Rikki Lake and I were
Did I say Rikki Lake?
You did. We were both on the same airplane one time. It was really hilarious. But nonetheless, I forgive you because she's younger than me. In the Tsarnaev trial, if I go from humor into something really serious, it is a formality that once the jury sentences in the federal court, that there is a separate hearing where the judge formally issues the sentence, which is the final judgment. There's a purpose of catharsis in this proceeding for three groups of people or individuals. Number one, catharsis for the victims or their families. People who can give a victim impact statement about what this crime and what this young man did to their lives or the lives of someone they lost. Now, in that group, you are probably going to see most people who had not testified in court during the penalty or the guilt phase, but you may see some repeats. We are told that there may be 20, there may be 30 people who will testify and look him in the eye and say, this is what you have done to my life or to the life of a loved one. Go ahead.
Now, so the other big question out there is, will we hear from Tsarnaev?
Yeah,
we haven't heard from him. Would you be surprised if he spoke?
I would be surprised, but then again, in this case, certain things surprise me and certain things don't. So he is the second person. You have the big group, then you have the second, and I have a third. The second is Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has the right to speak. It's not even testifying, it's really speaking. There are no consequences for him in speaking, except if he says something that seems really outrageous, it could ultimately affect his rights on appeal, even if it's subliminal. If the First Circuit Court of Appeals hears that he has said something like Zacharias Moussaoui, one of the 9/11 terrorists, if he says something about jihad or says something against Americans, that would really hurt him. On the other hand, if he says something about his remorse, why does it really help him? So if I'm his lawyer, I advise him not to speak.
Rikki, did it surprise you, given that Massachusetts is a somewhat liberal state, that the verdict would come out the way that they did, knowing that his life is on the line?
Yes, it did surprise me, and I was here to take that verdict. And I think that because I also practiced law in Massachusetts for a couple of decades, that knowing that it's such a blue state, it is so anti-death penalty, the polls, each of the polls, showed that the anti-death penalty attitude was growing during the 2 years between this terrible, terrible tragedy and the ultimate trial and sentencing. Also, the parents of Martin Richards, this beautiful 8-year-old child, that they had done a letter on the front page of the Boston Globe, actually thinking that life imprisonment was more appropriate. And I also thought there'd be people on the jury who might have simply said, what he did is so horrendous, I'm not going to let him be a martyr. I am not going to give him death. That's what he wants. I'll give him life. But I do think ultimately, since these jurors went through the carnage day by day in this trial.
And they saw, right? They saw with their own eyes what...
They went through a war zone,
right?
You know, and in a way that no first responder did, because they went through the war zone for every victim.
Right.
They were in the carnage.
All right, legal analyst Rikki Klieman, thank you so much.